Hey guys, this video I'm going to be breaking down Signs, which is the track I released after Argon. Hopefully I'll be going through all my projects, all my tracks, or at least most of my tracks in chronological order, so you know what to expect. A few weeks ago I got a laptop and it's finally all set up, ready for recording, so I'll be able to make these videos a lot more frequently. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the track. So I'll play the first 16 bars. Okay, so the very first sort of three sounds that we have, this first one is this recording of a waterfall I recorded myself in Germany, and it just sounds like this. I have this slightly modified reverb preset on it. I believe it's a modification of this one here, just with the decay turned down a bit. Yeah, it's pretty much identical, which kind of makes it a little wet, but because the size and the decay time are so small, you don't audibly hear the reflections. This is it without. And this is it with. It's just a really nice way to make it sound more distant, I guess. This second sound is a modified stock operator preset, and it sounds like this. The preset's called Light and Shadow, and what it has is these two chains, one I guess called Light, and the other called Shadow. Shadow is a much more sort of solid chord, if you will, and I'm automating in the levels of the operators here, the different oscillators in the patch. To kind of make some swells as the pad goes on, and here's the other layer. This layer has a ring mod on it, which is set to a really low hertz value. It's only 2 hertz, so essentially rather than creating different textures out of the original sound, it's essentially just volume automation, really slow volume automation, so it's kind of functioning as an auto pan in that sense. You can kind of hear the waviness of it, of the volume. After that there's a reverb and delay, just essentially putting it into a space, and then I'm using the auto filter inbuilt LFO here on low pass to give the sound a bit more movement. And I have some automation for that as well. Then the last sound here is probably the most important. So what this is a resample of the main chord sound. I think it's this chord here. I'll turn off all the effects because I did a lot to it. Let's see if it's that one. It's that one there. So I'll go over this chord patch in a second, but essentially I've taken that, recorded it to a new channel, and warped it, stretched it to 4 times its original length on complex mode. And that way, even though I have a ton of effects on it, it's still harmonically related to the main sound in the drop, if you will, in the main section. So I'll take off all these effects and go through them one by one. Okay, so it starts off, the first thing in the chain is just a frequency shifter, which I use here to pitch it down. And it creates a really slow rise up. This is it without. After that, I have a camel crusher, which distorts it a little bit, and that's only on for the first 16 bars, so that's here. This is it without. have the resonance turned up really high on the filter to just essentially compress and filter it a bit. After that I have an erosion, which is on noise mode, and that is on for the first 16 bars, and then rises all the way up and then turns off afterwards. Then I have probably one of the most important sounds in the effects, or one of the most important effects, is this phaser, where I have the feedback up relatively high and then I'm just turning the frequency down. That's without. That's with. In this sense, because I'm not using it with the inbuilt LFO, it's more like a formant filter, where I can just change the frequency to change kind of the vowel quality. After that, I have this Sennheiser Ambient Orbit plugin, which is a binaural effect plugin. Essentially what it does is it allows you to pan things, but rather than just panning them from left to right, it lets you pan them around the head of the listener. It only really works, like the effect only really works when you are wearing headphones, but I thought it was cool when I was making this, so I used it. And what I'm doing is I'm automating the position of the speaker in relation to the listener. And then for the first 12 bars or so, it goes around the head completely, but then I start making it go smaller and smaller and essentially only panning between sort of the front section, and this kind of creates some cool jumps in volume as the plugin tries to figure out how loud the sound should be for the binaural effect to work. So I'm kind of using it creatively, and then this is synced to the tempo. After that I have a cabinet where the dry wet just is up and then goes down, and I'm using this to kind of soften the impact of the Orbit plugin because it's quite dramatic, the effect it has. That's it with, and this is it without. After that I have an overdrive, kind of emphasizing the high frequencies again, because even though I love the sound of the cabinet effect, it does really mute the high frequencies, so I'm kind of bringing them back in with this overdrive. Just emphasizes those frequencies. And then I have the Isotope vocal doubler, which is kind of a unison kind of effect. Makes it really, really stereo. And if I were making this track now, I'd probably use the Kilohertz Ensemble plugin. Where is it? This one here. I've kind of stopped using vocal doubler, but I didn't have that one at the time, and so I used this one instead. But you can get some really insane stereo effects from it. After that I have a serum effect. Once again, making it even more stereo. I've got hyperdimension, chorus, and compressor. And these also come in at the end of the 16 bars here. Not doing as much as the vocal doubler, it's not as obvious, but it still adds to the stereo space. And then after that, obviously all of the high frequencies kind of need to be brought up again, so I've got this OTT. Then I've got just some light compression. Again, to sort of soften the hits, if you will, from the Ambient Orbit plugin. Not doing too much, very low ratio as well. Then I've got, again, this reverb preset, which isn't too obvious, but just puts things in a similar space. So since I've got it on both, I'm kind of putting the waterfall sample and this chord, the stretched chord, into the same space. It's very subtle, but it still helps to make it seem distant. The last thing I have here is an auto filter, which just filters the sound down in the second half. I have this preset playing again in this section. just modulating the oscillator levels and turning the frequency down at the end. The difference is that in this section, the LFO on the autofilter is much higher than it was before, so even though I'm turning the filter down here, you can still hear the LFO in action. Then, in these next 16 bars, as well as the waterfall, I have this recording of the center lathe, which I took from the design department at my school because they have a center lathe, and I recorded it. Kind of sounds like some background machinery. I'm using a frequency shifter here to just bring it in. And then there were some really nasty frequencies here. Just some not very nice 12 kilohertz stuff. So I just took a notch filter and notched all of that out. But other than that, not really done too much processing on it. Then I've got this drain bubbles sample, which I also recorded myself, and that sounds like this. Now what this sample is I washed my hands with a ton of soap and let all the soap stay in the sink after I was finished. And then I grabbed my mic, and these drain bubbles, that's the sound of all the bubbles from the lathered soap essentially popping as they go down the drain. I held it really close. It kind of sounds like ASMR, but I guess it has the same effect as having a kind of fireplace sound effect in your tracks. And then the last one here is this town center recording, which is just me walking through a small village in Germany. And then all of these are getting filtered towards the main section, just getting filtered down. The other stuff I have here is this rhythmic section. Obviously the main section here is very rhythmic, so I'm kind of bringing some of the rhythms in before, and that sounds like this. So I have this loud step sample, which sounds like this. I believe I took the original recording, which was me walking up a flight of stairs, and I just stretched out on beats mode, and then set it to probably either a quarter or an eighth mode, to essentially make it loop each quarter. And then I just synced it to the BPM here. Then I have this hit from that sample, which has been very heavily noise cancelled in Edison, and just made a rhythm out of it. Panned it left. And then this echo comes in later. Yeah, that about does it for the rhythm section here. The last things I have are this bass. This bass is very much a lot more minimalistic than the majority of my bass sounds, especially my newer tracks. It's just a sine wave being FM'd by another one with a saturator on it. I changed the bass of this further on here, for example, which essentially just moves the saturation up to the higher frequencies, so it affects the higher frequencies more. But then the most important element is that for every single one of these MIDI notes, I am automating the volume on this utility, just making the attack a bit softer on each one of the notes. And this bass line was actually pretty much directly inspired by the one in That Miserable Man Milligan by Harris Cole and Mr. Carmack. I love that one. And I was just feeling inspired by it, so I decided to do something similar where you have a very sort of sparse bass line, which only comes in every now and then. And it's kind of unpredictable. Then I have these vibraphone hits, which are also present in the main section. They sound like this. And I've just faded them, warped them a bit, looped them. And they also have a reverb on them, with a longer decay time than the other ones. And then slowly the filter's going up in this section. Up to there where they're completely dry. And clicking. Then, sort of the main melodic element, which I'll go through when I explain this section. So, overall, that section sounds like this. So now I'll go over the kind of main call element, because I kind of have built up a call and response, a sort of pattern in the main section. So that's this sound. And the way this was created is just an operator where I have this main sine wave being FM'd by two other ones, one which is the same pitch but shorter with an envelope, and the other one also has an envelope but it's twice the pitch and then I think half an octave, and that sounds like this. And it's just playing that kind of downwards arpeggio. And then I got isotope dynamic delay, which I don't think they make anymore, for free, so I was messing around with it. And I have these two parallel delay lines on it, one which is getting pitched down, and the other one which is like a distortion one. I believe you can either choose between having one where the pitch changes and having one where it distorts, so I have them both running in parallel, and then having the distortion on that sounds like this. Which was cool, but it was kind of a messy sound to work with, so I just recorded it out to a new track. That's an octave down. And then I've just chopped it up for the main section, especially here, and I've also put a ton of effects on it, so I'll mute these and I'll go through it again. This is what it sounds like, just chopped up in the sort of second 16 bars. For that one there, I have it pitched down a fourth. And then I have it warped on beats mode. So I'm just pitching around the file which I recorded out to make kind of almost a different melody as it leads in here. But then the main thing is the effects I've got on. So I'll go through all of them. So the first effect in the chain is just a phaser again. Kind of accentuates different frequencies. This is it without. This is it with. Makes it sound a lot more muffled. Then I have an erosion, this time on sine mode. And then I have this grain delay, which only comes in there for this second half here. And I have that pitched up 12 semitones, time on only 9 milliseconds, so it's barely delayed at all. And I've turned the feedback up to kind of give it the grainy, the really like typical grain delay effect. But that only comes in later. After that I have a resonator from kilohertz, again in this section. Set to B, which is kind of the root or the fifth, depending on like which way you look at it. For the most part, this track is in E minor, but that only comes in later again. After that, I have just an EQ, kind of a bandpass, well, combination of high pass and low pass to make a bandpass kind of thing. I'm just taking out the lows, because for some reason there's like a huge like low bump. And then kind of getting rid of the exaggerated inharmonic highs that the erosion creates. After that I have an EQ, just kind of being a bit more precise, taking out the notes I don't like. Because I mean you can kind of hear it more in this the source sound. Some of those are quite piercing. After that EQ I have this echo, which I use, as far as I'm aware, only here. Yeah. Just echoing. Creating copies. And then the feedback goes up to 95% here, which is because this one delays out for quite a while until this next one comes in, and that's when I turn this one off. There. I have the feedback, or well, the delay lines in the echo set to also be a bandpass filter, so they are even more muffled than the sound already is. So I have that one continues on a lot longer. And then there, all the automation, phaser changes frequency, echo goes off. The last thing I have in the chain is this utility where I have this kind of shape on the echo, or well, after the echo, so the delay line, even though it's only stereo here, meaning that the delay line itself doesn't pan, I'm panning it using a utility afterwards. And the reason you may want to do it like this, with a utility after instead of just selecting the ping pong mode here, is because while the ping pong mode you can see here has this repetition, and then that repetition, and then the other one, all being completely panned hard left or right, if I just have a balance afterwards, I can actually change the sort of pan curve for each individual one. So while a ping pong delay would be like that, by using a utility afterwards, I can make it go more and more panned as the delay continues on, which is just a good way to get more control out of your echo. The other sounds I have in this section include this one, which is just that render sped up, and then warped on beats mode with the transient mode off, so like the stopping mode, this one here, and then set to really short, which just essentially puts like a really short volume automation on each one, and I'm using that to, rather than having it sound like that, I can make it more choppy. This is just a kind of background repetition of this main one. I have these vibraphone hits again, and then this operator sound, which unfortunately I froze, and I've gone through all of the versions of this project and it was frozen even in the first one, so I guess I saved too late. But what it sounds like to me is a very short sine FM sound, and then here I've turned on a grain delay with the feedback engaged similarly to here in the second half. But I'm only automating it on for this section here, and then that creates that kind of delay. Then I have this harmonic sound, which is me playing on the school double bass, just a note, but playing it very close to the bridge, so I kind of get more overtones than I would otherwise. The effects chain I have on this is very minimal. I have an auto filter and a reverb with 9 seconds time. And then this isotope delay I'm automating on for this last hit here. Again, similar to the first one, it gets more and more distorted as the delay line continues. And then just in order to make that more manageable, I froze this one out or recorded it out into a new track. Automated the filter cutoff here. And then I also am using this utility and automating the pan on it. Essentially creating an LFO with the automation to just pan the reverb around. That's that sound, and then I have the kind of main chord sound. So I'll play just the operator patch. This is a triangle wave being FM'd by various sines. These two are up 13. Actually, this control isn't sense. I always thought it was sense, but it's not sense. It's a fraction of a whole number, apparently. Well, I've tuned it up a little bit to make it detune inside the synth. And I'm also using the spread control here on the pitch envelope, which also spreads the individual voices of the operator around a bit. Then I'm low passing it in the synth, and I'm using the OSR distortion mode so I can add some drive to it. So I've just got that on 10 decibels. After that, obviously a very mid-heavy, very kind of messy sound, so I did a ton of processing to clean it up a bit. I have this frequency shifter, again using it for effect, just here. And then I have this audio effect rack, which is doing the bulk of the work. So I've split it into lows and highs. This is what the lows sounds like. It's not really a low split, to be honest, because I'm not low passing it anywhere. I've just had this cabinet on it. So I've got an auto pan in the second half, panning it from left to right. Then an amp where I'm automating the controls, the treble and presence, making it more high-endy here, then here, and then a cabinet afterwards to kind of mute the harshness. That's it without with. And then again a vocal doubler from Isotope. This one is only coming on here though, kind of making it more stereo for that section. And then the highs, this parallel chain is actually completely kind of not harmonic. I've got two ring mods in succession. They're just making it sound really crushed, and I'm taking out all of the lows because otherwise it would sound nasty. Taking them out before the ring mod, so that way the lows don't go in and mess up the effect that this gives. And that together sounds like this. After that, just some multiband compression, bringing down the muddy mids and accentuating the highs, especially the kind of ring mod sound I got from it. And then one last EQ, which I'm using to cut again the really intense lows, and then as a low pass filter near the end here. And that altogether sounds like this. Then I have this main rhythmic arrangement, which is essentially just made through layering tons of Foley and not really having too many effects on it. I'll go through that. So this first one is a lock click sound, which sounds like this. You can kind of hear the denoising artifacts there. But I'm just looping that one, occasionally choosing different parts of the sound and high passing it. After that, another lock click sound. This one I have frequency shifted up, but it's just finding kind of percussive hits in the Foley I record and arranging them in a rhythmic way. Again, the steps. And this kind of hit. Then I have this open spaces extract, which is just kind of a lead in, I guess, to the clap. And then here. This one's ring modded. This is what it sounds like without. Just making it sound less like an actual real room space and more like just a kind of creative effect. And then I'm high passing that afterwards because ring mod can kind of mess up your low frequencies. This one I have warped on beats mode, on the kind of back and forth mode, and then I've taken all the hits and made markers quantized to the beat. So that way the back and forth looping is in time with the music and it's not just all over the place. Then I have some more step sounds. That's what the original sounds like, and I've processed it a bit. Frequency shifted up, taking the lows out. Kind of a background percussion layer again. This recording is me throwing some stones around on a beach. I think I was throwing them against the wall. And then I took that recording and went into Edison and used this, where is it? The blur function, this one. I think just on default settings, and that kind of stretches out all of them and gets rid of any transients. After that, I have this washer click sound. Again, just a kind of hit. Just loads of sort of transient-y sounds that I've got layered together, making the bulk of the beat behind the drums. And then I've got a train sound, obviously. Which I've kind of used more here. And the last thing here is just this really high-pitched kick, which is up 17 semitones. And then it has a bit of a drum bass on it, taking out the highs and distorting it a bit, saturating it. And then the arrangement of this is just getting different arrangements that sound good and then variating them over every 8 bars or so. So this is what it sounds like in the first section. And then here. Just making really subtle changes to kind of change it around a bit. And then of course the kick and clap, or snare, kick and snare. Is it a snare? Kind of half and half. Really simple, just got a kick sample with a drum bass on it, muting it and taking down the track. This actually looks like it's exactly the same settings as the one on the other kick, which I'm using more percussively. And then a snare, shift it up a bit. Not doing too much, and then a high pass. So yeah, that's what the main section sounds like. May as well talk about my sidechain while I'm here. I've just got actually longer sidechain than I tend to have, because this is kind of a slower song. I've got only 4 and 5 to 1 ratios, and then a very long, or well, in the case of sidechain, a very long release time of 35 milliseconds. This is pretty much just all the same arrangement, just varied slightly, until we get to here. So at this point, I'm bringing various rhythmic elements out. I've already taken out the lock click, and I'm taking out the stones here, and then taking out the steps. I've got a small delay on it, just letting it ring out. But then at this point, all of the rhythmic elements are gone, and I bring this bass sound back in at the end, as well as this really high sine. So I'm bringing ambience back in. I've got nothing during the drop, kind of keeping it clean, I guess. But then I have this town center recording. Right at the end. I've got a frequency shift on it, which is shifting it down. I have some serum effects, just to delay. With the mix slowly going up. And then a grade delay, which, as it goes from 0 to 100, is pitching the sound down 2 octaves. And then I'm panning it to the right for the last hit. This sound here is very, very quiet. It's just a sine, really. I just made a kind of rhythm, playing a really high note, yeah, E6. And then at the end, I turn this delay on. And it just fades out. Right at the end here, I have this kind of melodic change. and it ends on this E minor 9 chord. And then for the last 3 bars, I actually have the bass come back in with this really low, first a B, -1, then an E, and then a B again. I thought it would be cool to kind of mess around with the arrangement in this one and actually have the lowest bass note come right at the end, kind of just be right in the listener's face one last time. And that's how it ends. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be making these videos a lot more frequently, hopefully going over some of my more popular tracks, some tracks that I would consider to be produced much better than this one and Argon, because these are quite old. But yeah, thanks for watching.